My name is Rachel. I am 34 years old. And the day my father's lawyer read his will out loud, I sat completely still. Not because I was shocked. Not because I was hurt. But because I had known this moment was coming for a very long time. My stepbrother Marcus stood across the room with his arms crossed and a small smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. He thought he had won. He thought the story was over. He had no idea that I had been quietly writing a very different ending for 7 years. Let me take you back to the beginning. Not to the will. Not to the courtroom. To a kitchen table in a small apartment on the east side of the city. I was 9 years old. My mother was making dinner. The phone rang. She answered it, and I watched her face change the way faces change when something has already happened and cannot be undone. She hung up. She came back to the stove. She stirred the pot. And then she said, very quietly, "Your father and I are separating." She did not cry. My mother was not someone who cried in front of people. Not even in front of her 9-year-old daughter. She stirred the pot and I sat at the table and neither of us said anything else for a long time. That was the first moment I understood that some things simply happen to you. And what matters is what you do after. My parents divorced that same year. The proceedings were not dramatic. There was no fighting in hallways, no shouting through lawyers. My father was cooperative in the way that people are cooperative when they have already decided to leave and just want the process to be quick. My mother got the apartment. My father got his freedom. He used that word once, years later, at a dinner table. He was telling a story to Marcus's friends about his younger days. He laughed when he said it. His freedom. I was sitting 3 feet away. I do not think he remembered that his freedom had a 9-year-old daughter attached to it. Or perhaps he remembered and simply did not mind. I was never entirely sure which was worse. He remarried 2 years after the divorce. Her name was Donna. She was a woman with warm eyes and strong opinions and a son named Marcus who was 7 years old and had never known his own father. My father adopted Marcus within the year. He did it quietly, efficiently, the same way he did most things. One day Marcus was Donna's son. The next day he was my father's son. I was never adopted by anyone. I remained Rachel. The biological daughter. The one who came on weekends. The one who sat at the dinner table and passed the bread and tried very hard to smile at the right moments. I want to be careful here. Donna was not cruel to me. She was not the kind of stepmother that stories warn you about. She was simply a woman who had her own child, her own life, her own idea of what this family looked like. And in that picture, I was always slightly out of frame. Marcus and I were not enemies. We were not close either. We were 2 children who had been placed into a family arrangement neither of us had chosen, and we navigated it the way children do. Carefully. Quietly. Always aware of the invisible lines. He had a bedroom in that house. A real bedroom. With a door that closed. With posters on the wall and a desk and a window that looked out onto the backyard. I had a pull-out sofa in my mother's apartment. We did not have enough money for a 2-bedroom. My mother worked as much as she could. She picked up extra shifts when they were available. She clipped coupons and bought store brands and made sure I had what I needed for school even when it meant she went without. She never complained about it, not once. But I was 15 years old and sleeping on a pull-out sofa and I understood without being told what that meant. It meant we were on our own. My father paid child support. The minimum amount required by law. Every month, exactly that number, deposited into my mother's account with the precision of someone paying a utility bill. Not a dollar more. Not a call to ask how we were doing. Not a visit to the apartment to see where his daughter was sleeping. The minimum. And when I turned 18, even the minimum stopped. He called me on my birthday that year. I remember the call. He wished me happy birthday. He asked what my plans were. He said he hoped I had a good day. He did not mention that the child support payments had ended. He did not ask if I needed anything as I stepped into adulthood with no savings and no cushion and a mother who had already given everything she had. He asked if I was coming to Marcus's baseball game that weekend. Marcus had joined a travel league. My father went to every game. I said yes, I would be there. I always said yes. I put myself through college. This is not a small thing and I will not rush past it. I applied to every scholarship I could find. I sat at the kitchen table after my mother left for her night shift and I filled out applications until my eyes blurred. I got 2 partial scholarships. I took out loans for the rest. I worked part-time throughout all 4 years. Coffee shop in the mornings before class. Library desk on weekday evenings. Catering on weekends. When I could get the shifts. I graduated in 3.5 years because I took extra credits every semester to reduce tuition costs. I walked across that stage in May and I had already accepted a job offer in finance that I had negotiated entirely by myself. My mother was in the front row. She was wearing a blue dress she had bought specifically for that day. She cried. She was not someone who cried in front of people, but she cried that day. My father came. He sat in the 3rd row. He took one photograph on his phone. After the ceremony he found me in the crowd and he said he was proud of me. He said it the way people say things they mean to sound significant but have not thought very deeply about. Then he asked if I could help him with something. I was 22 years old. I had been working in finance for 2 weeks. I was still learning where the coffee machine was. My father sat across from me in a diner booth and he laid out the situation the way he always laid out things. Calmly. Practically. With numbers. He had bought the house when he married Donna. 4 bedrooms. A nice neighborhood. A garage. A backyard with a deck he had started building and never finished. Over the years he had refinanced the mortgage twice. Once for a car. Once for what he described as an investment opportunity that had not worked out the way he expected. The mortgage was now underwater. He was behind on payments. His credit had taken damage. He needed someone with a clean credit history and steady income to co-sign a restructured loan. He needed help with the monthly payment. Just temporarily. Just for a little while. Just until things stabilized. I looked at my father across that diner table. I thought about the baseball games. I thought about the pull-out sofa. I thought about 18 years of the minimum. And then I thought about something else. I thought, maybe this is the moment. Maybe if I do this, if I show up for him the way he never showed up for me, something will shift. Maybe he will finally see me. 22 years old. Still hoping. I signed the papers. I want to describe what those 7 years actually looked like. Because it was not abstract. It was not a number on a page. It was specific and it was monthly and it was real. In the first year, the payment was manageable. A stretch, but manageable. I had my entry-level salary and I budgeted carefully and I made it work. In the second year I got a raise and the payment became easier. I started to feel like perhaps the temporary arrangement was actually temporary. In the third year, my father had a minor health scare. Nothing serious, the doctors said. But it was a warning. He cut back his work hours. His income dropped. The amount I was covering increased. I covered it. In the fourth year, Donna's mother became ill and Donna traveled frequently to be with her. The house required more upkeep. I hired a service to come once a month and billed it to myself without saying anything. In the 5th year, Marcus quit his job at the shipping company to pursue music. He had always had an interest in it, my father explained to me over the phone. He deserved the chance to try. I said nothing. I sent the mortgage payment. In the 6th year I sat down and calculated the total I had contributed. The number was $164,000. I sat with that number for a long time. Then I opened a new document on my computer and I began keeping more detailed records. Every transfer. Every date. Every amount. And I called a lawyer. Not to start anything. Just to understand what I had. In the 7th year, my father's health declined more seriously. His heart. He was 61 years old and the doctors used words that meant the timeline was no longer abstract. I drove to that house every other weekend. I cooked meals and left them in the freezer. I organized his medication. I sat with him in the afternoons when he was tired and we watched television and sometimes he talked and sometimes he did not and I was there either way. Marcus was there sometimes. On the days he did not have plans. On the days the band was not practicing or the friends were not available. He was not a bad person. He was simply someone who had always had the option of showing up or not. He had never learned that some things require you whether you feel like it or not. There is something I need to tell you about those weekend visits. Something I have not told many people. During those afternoons, my father and I talked more than we had in years. He was tired and the tiredness made him quieter and the quiet made him more honest. He told me once that he had not been a good father to me. He did not say it as an apology exactly. He said it the way someone states a fact they have finally stopped arguing with. He said, "I know I wasn't there the way I should have been." I looked at the television. I said, "I know." He said, "You turned out well anyway." I said, "Yes. I did." He nodded. We kept watching television. It was not the conversation I had spent 20 years waiting for. But it was something. And I held on to it. He died on a Tuesday morning in November. Early. Before sunrise. I was there. I had stayed the night because something had felt different the evening before. Something in the way he breathed. Something in the way he held my hand when I said goodnight that felt like he was holding on for a specific reason. Marcus was not there. He had driven home the previous evening. He had things to do in the morning. I sat in the chair beside my father's bed and I held his hand and I was there when he left. I called the nurse. I called Donna, who was asleep down the hall. I called Marcus. I did all of this calmly. Then I went to the bathroom and I ran cold water over my wrists and I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. I cried. Genuinely and fully. Because he was my father. Because despite the pull-out sofa and the minimum payments and the baseball games and all the years of being secondary, he was my father. And he was gone. And the version of him I had always hoped might emerge, the version who saw me completely, had died with him. I grieved that version too. The 2 weeks between his death and the will reading were quiet. I handled arrangements. I coordinated with the funeral home. I wrote his obituary. Marcus chose the flowers. Donna sat in her living room and received visitors and I brought food and refilled plates and made sure everything ran the way it was supposed to. Nobody asked me how I was doing. I did not expect them to. The lawyer's office had beige walls and a round table and 4 chairs. Donna. Marcus. Me. The lawyer. The lawyer was a precise man with neat handwriting and the practiced neutral expression of someone who has read difficult documents in front of difficult families many times. He read clearly. The house went to Marcus. The savings account, which held approximately $42,000, went to Marcus. The car went to Marcus. There was a single sentence about me. It said that Rachel was to receive his watch, a stainless steel timepiece that had belonged to his own father. The lawyer slid a small velvet box across the table. Marcus was already leaning forward asking about the timeline for the title transfer. Donna was nodding. I picked up the velvet box. I opened it. I looked at the watch. It was a nice watch. My grandfather had worn it. I closed the box. I put it in my bag. I said nothing. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment. Not anger. Not even surprise. Something quieter. Something that felt like the final confirmation of something I had already known. I had spent 7 years contributing to that house. $219,000. And my father had left me a watch. He had made his position clear. Not with words. With a document. A legal document that said, in the most official way possible, that Marcus was his son and I was someone who received a watch. I had prepared for this. I had spent 14 months preparing for exactly this. Let me explain what a resulting trust claim is. Because this is important. When a person contributes money toward a property over a sustained period of time, and when there is a reasonable expectation attached to that contribution, the law can recognize that the contributing person has an equitable interest in the property. Even if their name is not on the title. Even if no formal agreement was ever signed. The contributions speak for themselves. The documentation speaks for itself. I had $219,000 in fully documented, traceable, verified contributions. I had bank transfers with dates. I had email chains where my father acknowledged the arrangement. I had a text message thread spanning 4 years where he referenced the payments directly. I had a lawyer who specialized in estate disputes. And I had 14 months of preparation. I filed the claim 30 days after the will was read. Marcus received the legal paperwork on a Wednesday afternoon. He called me that evening. He was not composed. His voice was tight and fast and he cycled through several different emotional registers in the span of 3 minutes. First he said I was being vindictive. Then he said my father had made his wishes clear and I was disrespecting them. Then he said I was tearing the family apart. Then he said he had always known I resented him. I let him finish. I waited until the line was quiet. Then I said, very calmly, Marcus, I contributed $219,000 to that house over 7 years. I have documentation for every payment. My lawyer will be in contact with yours. He said something else. I did not stay on the line to hear it. I ended the call. Set my phone face down on the counter. Made a cup of tea. And sat in my quiet apartment and thought about how long I had waited to be that calm in a moment that mattered. The legal process was 8 months long. Marcus hired a lawyer. His lawyer sent letters designed to make the claim seem frivolous. My lawyer responded with documentation. Marcus's lawyer argued that the contributions were gifts. My lawyer produced the email where my father wrote, and I will paraphrase, Rachel has been covering the payment this year, we have an understanding about her interest in the property going forward. An understanding. My father had written that word. He had acknowledged it. He simply had not put it in the will. Whether that was an oversight or a decision, I will never know. But it did not matter. Because the law does not require intentions. The law requires evidence. And I had evidence. The court recognized my equitable interest. My financial contributions represented 53.4% of the property's total value at the time of settlement. The house was appraised at $410,000. Marcus had 2 options. He could buy out my share at just over $218,000. Or we could sell. Marcus did not have $218,000. He had never had $218,000. He had spent the last 2 years playing music and borrowing money from a man who was no longer alive to lend it. We sold the house. The sale closed on a Thursday in the early spring. The wire transfer came through that afternoon. My share came to $229,000 after fees. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at my bank account. I thought about the diner booth where I had signed the papers at 22 years old. I thought about the first payment I had sent. I thought about 6 years of payments after that. I thought about the pull-out sofa. I thought about scholarship applications at the kitchen table while my mother worked the night shift. I thought about the velvet box sliding across the lawyer's table. I thought about the watch in my bag. I did not feel triumphant. Triumph feels like winning something you wanted. What I felt was different. It felt like accuracy. Like the world had finally done the correct math. I want to address something directly. Some people, when they hear this story, will say I was wrong. They will say that a father's will is a father's final word and should be respected. They will say that family does not belong in courtrooms. They will say I should have let it go. To those people I want to say something honestly. I did not put this situation in a courtroom. I documented it for 7 years. The situation was created the day my father made an agreement with me and then chose not to honor it in his final document. I simply showed up to the room he had already opened. Letting it go would have meant accepting that $219,000 was the price of being someone's biological daughter. That the minimum was always going to be what I received no matter how much I gave. I had already paid that price for 34 years. I was done paying. Donna does not speak to me now. I understand it. That was her home. Whatever happened between my father and me, she had built a life inside those walls. Losing the house was a real loss for her. I did not take pleasure in it. I did not go looking for ways to make it harder. But I also could not absorb her grief at the cost of my own justice. There is a version of being a good person that asks you to keep giving even after you have given everything. I no longer believe in that version. Marcus sent me one message 6 months after the sale. It was short. He said, "I hope you're happy now." I read it once. I put my phone down. I thought about whether I wanted to respond. I thought about all the things I could say. About what 7 years looks like. About what it means to be the one who shows up. About baseball games and pull-out sofas and minimum payments and velvet boxes. I did not write any of it. There was nothing left to prove. I set my phone face down. And I went back to my life. I used the money intentionally. I paid off my student loans first. Every dollar of them. The loans I had carried since I was 18. The ones I had taken on alone because there was no one to help. I made the final payment on a Tuesday morning and I sat at my computer and I watched the balance hit 0 and I stayed very still for a moment. Then I moved on. I used another portion as the down payment on an apartment. My apartment. My name on the deed. No cosigners. No arrangements. No temporary situations that become permanent. Just mine. I painted the walls a shade of green the first had loved since I was a child. I bought a sofa that does not fold out. I bought a bed with a proper frame and a headboard and a mattress that I chose myself. I bought a small table and put it by the window and that is where I have my coffee every morning. I look out at the street. I think about how long I waited for something that was already mine. I still have the watch. I wear it sometimes. Not as a symbol of what my father left me. Not as a reminder of the velvet box or the round table or the lawyer's neutral expression. I wear it because it was my grandfather's. Because whatever failures existed in the generations that followed, the man who first wore this watch was someone my grandmother loved deeply. And somewhere in that lineage is where I came from. I wear it for that. I have thought a lot about what I would say to my younger self. The 9-year-old sitting at the kitchen table while her mother stirred the pot. The 18-year-old whose minimum had just expired. The 22-year-old sitting across from her father in a diner booth, still hoping. I would tell her, keep every record. Not because people are always going to fail you. But because when they do, documentation is the most honest language available. I would tell her, your contribution has value. Measurable. Legal. Real. I would tell her, the version of you that keeps showing up even when no one is watching is not weak. She is building something. It may take years. It will look different than you expect. But she is building something real. If you are someone who knows what it means to be the reliable one. The one who shows up without being asked. The one who signs the papers and sends the payments and sits in the hospital chair and writes the obituary. Hear this. You are not invisible even when you are treated that way. Your contributions exist. They are traceable. They have weight. Keep your records. Know your worth. Not because family should come to legal documents. But because sometimes it does. And when it does, you deserve to walk into that room with everything you need. You have already given enough. It is time to collect what is yours.